If you want to start playing around with multi-vendor equipment, that stack can get pretty large. So the really cool thing today is that a lot of vendors are actually offering a virtualized version of their networking operating system that you can take and run on top of a hypervisor. So I'm going to walk through some of the hardware that I've used in the past and some of what I'm using today. The first one is this older desktop. Take a look to see what you may have just laying around that's older and that's not being used. It's quite possible that you can actually load a hypervisor such as ESXi or Nutanix CE on an older box. One thing you have to take in consideration is the age of the box. You want at least an Intel 1st Gen I series processor. You can probably run about 4 virtual networking operating systems on here, but the downside is that you can't run a whole lot on here. So the next one is something like this. So this is a 1RU server. Now, this will get you a lot more horsepower. This is actually a Sandy Bridge supported motherboard. So I have 2 processors in here, 6-core processors with hyper-threading gives me 12 per, and I can gain up to 24 cores of processing power in this box. Now the downside is that it's pretty loud. So it has lots of fans here in the front, and it's pushing and pulling a lot of air to keep those processors from overheating. Now this is a very interesting one. This one is a very popular case that a lot of people use for home labs or mobile labs, and it's the Supermicro SYS-E200 unit. So as you can see, it's got the 1RU height to it, but it's relatively much shorter. It's not as deep. It does have a DC power supply brick that comes with it. And what I like about it is it has 4 NICs already there. It also has another NIC for management, out-of-band management. Now the downside to this guy is cost. So this is going to go up to hundreds of dollars. So it's much more expensive. So one of the other ones that I like and that I've been playing around with is this guy. So this is an Odroid H2, very small form factor. It has an integrated Intel x86 processor on it, and the thing that I love about this is you can see it's fanless. So it has 2 gigabit Ethernet ports. It also has 2 SATA connections with your power as well. It also has an NVMe slot on the bottom of the motherboard, and it supports DDR3 and up to 32 gigs of RAM. The only downside is the performance. It's a 4-core processor. It's actually going to run slower than the Sandy Bridge. However, you can load a couple of virtual networking operating systems on here. And the last thing that I've been looking at is actually trying to take virtual networking operating systems and load them into some sort of cloud. So I started playing around with Google Cloud, and they had a compute that you could spin up where you can enable nested hypervisors. So what that means is I can actually pass through the required components from the CPU up into the virtual compute instance that you can fire up in Google Cloud. And I also put some notes and details on some of the things that I have listed here. One other thing to note for the Odroid H2 is it does take quite a bit of work to get ESXi on here, because you do have to bake in the drivers for the network interface cards and also the NVMe drive as well. So I have links in the video description with information on how you can get to some of that stuff.